The Slash Filmcast is brought to you by Sonos. For the first time ever, Sonos is offering listeners of the Slash Filmcast 10% off one order of $2,500 or less for any product on Sonos.com. Use the promo code FILMCAST10, that's capital FILMCAST10 at Sonos.com to receive this exclusive offer.
Nicely done, Jeff. Nicely done. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David Chen, and with me are...
Vendor Hardware.
Jeff Kanata.
And joining us today, I have podcasted with this person for hundreds of hours. We've done shows about Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Justified. And by the way, she also writes for a small up-and-coming magazine called Vanity Fair. Joanna Robinson, welcome back to the Slash Filmcast. How are you doing today, Joanna?
I'm doing so well. I'm so happy to talk to you guys again. I'm trying to remember the last... I can't remember the last one. Was it
I think it might have been
World?
Ghostbusters.
Oh, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that's probably the last time.
You always bring me on for the movies where women are...
Good job. Wow.
Well, I don't know if Kingsman falls into that category, but...
I know, we can chat about it. But yeah, no, I'm so happy to be back. I love talking to you guys about movies.
We love talking to you as well, Joanna. And I have to say, you know, doing a like kind of a bonus guest appearance on Slash Filmcast, like I'm used to needing to beat the clock with Joanna Robinson podcasts because, you know, we usually do TV related podcasts and we got to like get them out every week. But having you here on this show for today is like very much a bonus. Really appreciate it. So looking forward to chatting with you today. You can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Now, before
what David's saying is that we don't care about beating the clock here.
Yeah, we are.
The movie's been out for 4 days. Yep. We're just, who cares?
Who gives a crap, really? So wanted to do some follow-up, actually, from last week, guys. So last week we reviewed Mother, the new Darren Aronofsky movie. Joanna, is this a movie you've seen or have any desire to see?
Yeah, I saw it.
What did you think of it, just out of curiosity?
Well, I think here's what I knew about it going in. I knew that there was no score because I had talked to Paula Fairfield who does the sound for Game of Thrones, and she did the sound for Mother, and she told me about the whole no score thing. So I thought that was fascinating. And then I knew that there was like some sort of allegory metaphor that people were arguing about, but I didn't know what the argument was. And then I sort of was watching it, and it was pretty readily apparent to me that it was like that it was the Bible. Like that seemed pretty apparent to me because I don't know, I took too many basic English lit classes or something like that. And it's like, and so I felt like that metaphor is pretty heavy handed. Here's what I'll say. I don't ever want to see Mother again. But I didn't hate the experience. I didn't hate the experience of watching it, and I admire the ambition of it. So that's how I feel about Mother.
Yeah. Well, very cool. That's actually very close to how I feel about it too. I don't know if I'm going to watch it again, but yeah, I do admire it. I do like that it's gotten a lot of people talking. But okay, last week I made the potential. Was it an assertion? It was a guess that it was Rachel Weisz in the opening shot of that movie.
Right, yeah.
And I had
would
spoken
have been supremely fucked up.
I had spoken with several critics who I will not name, who also said that was definitely Rachel Weisz in the opening scene. Of course,
definitely a dark featured woman, and yeah,
right.
It's Weisz-like. It's
Weisz-like. That's right. But it was not Rachel Weisz. For those who are curious, it was Sarah Jean LaBrosse, who is credited as for Mother in the credits. And there is also another woman at the end of the movie, Laurence LaBeouf, who is a separate actress. And
I don't even know if we need to say that.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to edit that out.
Yeah,
forget I just said that. I'm going to edit that out.
Fine.
Hold on, let me make a timestamp of that. So anyway, it was a woman named Sarah Jean LaBrosse, who is credited as for Mother in the movie. And so I found a photo of this woman. I tweeted it out next to a photo of Rachel Weisz, and I said, "Is there any resemblance between these two people?" And I got like 50 tweets saying, "You're dumb, David. These people look nothing alike." So
I think in the context of how you see in the movie,
there's a lot of makeup and fire,
burning.
Flesh. I'll just say, I spoke with some critics who thought that it was possibly Rachel Weisz, and I don't think I was completely insane for thinking that, but and I would also argue the subtext lends itself to thinking that. So,
oh God, but that would be so messed up.
It
man.
is.
Like,
it is pretty messed up. Yeah. Anyway,
imagine that call when he's like, "Hey, so I'm doing this project."
She's like, I'm banging James Bond. You could do whatever, right?
There's a lot of makeup involved.
Yeah, she's still banging James Bond.
Yeah, there you go. She wins. She's
like, Darren, I put up with your shit through the fountain, but now I don't have to anymore. Bye-bye.
Yeah, well, anyway, I just wanted to throw out there that, Sarah Jean LaBrosse is the actress, and sorry if I got that incorrect. But I still think it was potentially intentional, maybe. Anyway, okay. Thank you for all of your emails. Anyway, thank you for all your emails around the movie Mother. Definitely a movie that is worth talking about, in my opinion, and I actually really appreciated hearing everyone's opinion about that movie on last week's episode. So before we move on to what we're doing today on the Slash Filmcast, we got some what we've been watching for you, just a couple of brief film news stuff, and a review of Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Want to acknowledge stuff that's been going on in the film community. Some of you may have heard of some recent harassment and assault allegations surrounding the Alamo Drafthouse, specifically concerning two film critics associated with the organization, Devin Faraci and Harry Knowles. The head of the Alamo Drafthouse, Tim League, has also been criticized for his part in enabling their behavior. We won't get into the details because you can easily find them by Googling, but suffice to say, we believe the women who have come forward in this situation. And for all of us here on the Slash Filmcast, it's been painful to witness. Many of these women have suffered in silence for many years, thinking that they couldn't share their stories publicly because it would hurt them professionally. And we've asked ourselves, is there anything we here on the show we could have done differently? We may not have always had the most progressive of attitudes, but in recent years, we've worked hard to understand the full extent of the misogyny in our community. And it's honestly sometimes been invisible to us as men in a very male-dominated industry. I understand more and more. I'm sorry, I'm going to put the "we" on there. We understand more and more that saying nothing can enable this kind of behavior. And so we just wanted to come out and say, anyone who facilitates this kind of silence is no friend of the show. All of us can do more to listen and believe people when they tell us their experiences. We will do better. And if you want to share your story with us, we're listening on Twitter and on /filmcast@gmail.com. So just wanted to acknowledge all the stuff that's going on, say how we all feel here on the podcast. Joanna, I know you know many people in this community. Many of the people who are affected by all this stuff, they've been guests on the /Filmcast before. We're all big fans of them, who are speaking out now about all the terrible stuff that's going on. But Joanna, kind of like, do you have any reflections as you've witnessed this unraveling?
Well, I want to say a couple things quickly about all of this sort of exploded right around Fantastic Fest, which happened in Austin, which is sort of a Draft House the Draft House Film Festival that Ain't It Cool News, Harry Knowles' outlet, often has co-sponsored. Anyway, it was a very strange timing for all of this. So you had a lot of people who have been involved in cases like this in one city at one time, and there were some people who said the festival should be canceled or all this sort of stuff. But everything that I heard from the people who were there, both men and women, is that there were just really amazing conversations happening on the ground in Austin around this. And so, I understand there are some people who boycotted the festival. I understand why, but I also think it's I'm very heartened by what I heard about what happened down in Austin, and what I've heard from people in that sort of Austin film community, where they're like, one person told me, they're like, people have overestimated how much we actually embrace Devin and Harry in the first place. Like, these are two characters that had a lot of power, but maybe not a lot of affection from people in that community. And maybe this is partly why. Not necessarily that people knew that they were this terrible, but they're, it's, if you do something like this, you probably are not great in other aspects of your life as well. And then just from my own perspective, I will say that as a woman who entered this industry, whatever it is that I do, film and TV criticism sometimes, like when I first started, I did have a couple critics whose name you probably all know and who I grew up respecting. It's like say inappropriate things to me in DMs on Twitter, and I was just sort of like a crash course in like, oh, this is how this is. Like they never met me, they don't know me at all, but it's just sort of out there for some people. Definitely hashtag not all critics, but it's definitely out there for some people that if you're powerful, and this applies to a lot of industries, if you're powerful in a community, maybe you feel like you can get away with treating women a certain way. So that's what I have to say.
Well, as I've stated, that statement that we all believe in, that I read just now. Let me do that again. Well, Joanna, I think I speak for all of us when I say that we are open to hearing those kinds of stories, and we're open to criticism and also a deeper understanding of like what we can do to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But anyway, wanted to acknowledge that this is something that's going on in the community, that we are doing what we can to listen and understand. And Devindra, I think for you and me, like this is especially like a kind of a real soul-searching moment because sites like Ain't It Cool News and Chud.com, where Devin used to write for, were really kind of influential in our own growth as online nerds, basically.
For sure. I mean, this is all tough to take and really sad to hear and disappointing. Ain't It Cool was probably the first big online film site I visited regularly when I was in high school. So it was like late 90s as things were getting started, and things were just happening there. Who was it? Was it Drew who was banned from Lucasfilm? Like all that stuff was happening around the fan community. And they were kind of like basically on the cutting edge. I think, I honestly haven't read the site in over a decade. I definitely haven't been reading it regularly in a very long time, mostly because I think Drew, like for me, I love Drew's writing, and he moved on, and to see his stuff, I went to HitFix and now his own site. It's all very sad. That's kind of all I have to say.
It kind of is upsetting that like this veneer of fun and being rebellious, it kind of in some ways hid, in some ways enabled abuses that are unconscionable, and and to see that something that like was influential to you be like understood, now everyone understands, like was hiding a lot of bad stuff. It's very unfortunate, and we need to work as hard as we can to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. So
I just want to say, sorry, one more thing, which is that outside of the realm of like you mentioned Tim League, but like the wider circle of like not just men who have behaved inappropriately to women, but men who shielded other men. And that's something I feel comfortable calling Tim League out for. And I just want to say that I really admire, I'm going to shout out specifically Eric Vesey because he's someone that I know and like enormously. And he and the two other Ain't It Cool News writers sort of just quit today after the Harry news, because as a show of like, we can't tolerate this, we can't stand with this, and they released statements, and I just can't even express how much that means, in stark contrast to someone like Tim, who's like, hey, for our brand, we're just going to sweep this under the rug, and so I just want to shout out Eric and his colleagues, and thank everyone, men and women who have who have, you guys definitely included, who have stood up and said like this is not okay in our community. So thank you.
All right.
It's a weird thing, right? I think I'm sorry, just
No,
real
go
quick.
ahead, please.
It's a weird thing. Whatever this thing we're all a part of is, it's very nascent, right? It's very early days. It's just beginning in the grand scheme of things. We're 10 years into this thing, 15 at most, of this weird sort of global, or at least, national community of people that talk like this about media. And there are growing pains, and it sucks that this stuff happens. But I think in this time of whatever this time is that we're going through, I think we're all kind of figuring out that being decent and good to one another is so important. And in all of these little niches of connection that technology is allowing, it's really important to reinforce that decency and goodness regardless of who you're dealing with. So I think it's an important thing not to sweep under the rug, as you said, and I applaud you, Dave, for wanting to bring it up on the show.
All right. Well, again, our doors are always open in terms of what people want to share with us, and people have seen, like, I've responded to criticism publicly and privately. So yes, /filmcast@gmail.com, @/filmcast on Twitter and on Facebook. And hopefully we can continue listening, continue understanding. That seems to be the most important thing right now. All that said, let's move on with the podcast. Let's get on with what we're talking about today. And let's talk about what we've been watching. I wanted to mention one thing I've been watching. So Netflix put out this new special. It's called Jerry Before Seinfeld. Have you guys heard of this? This is a new Jerry Seinfeld. I thought it was a documentary, but it's actually just like a stand-up special with a couple of interstitials, really. So it's not.
He's
really
doing his like early material, right? Isn't that the hook here?
I would say it's like there's a bunch of his early material. So I read I was a big Jerry Seinfeld fan back in the day. I read like Sign Language, his book about like that had all of his material in it. And so a lot of it is his greatest hits, but there's also some stuff I haven't heard before. And I've actually seen Seinfeld relatively recently live, and it's like completely different from that material. So it felt like a combination of some new material and some greatest hits, Jeff. But maybe he's done it all before. I'm not sure. But it is, this is one of the most successful comedians of all time, and it's just interesting to hear his perspective, to hear how hard he works. There's one portion where he shows you all of his notes, and like lays them all out on the ground, and it's just fascinating. It's meant to appear completely effortless when they're on stage. Like they're just riffing with you. They're just coming up with it in real time. But in reality, so much tireless work, workshopping, writing things down goes into it. And it's pretty inspiring to behold. I still think he's very funny. Some of his material is pretty dated these days. Like it's clear that some of it was written in the 90s or even earlier. But overall, I still had a really good time watching Jerry Before Seinfeld on Netflix. And I'd recommend you guys check it out. So
the most amazing thing to me about him is that he's 63.
Yeah, he looks great.
He looks like he's 45.
He looks very good. Yeah,
money is the best
fountain of youth.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, he probably has like 15
63. Would you ever guess that he was 63 by looking at him?
He looks good. He looks good. He looks very vital. Yeah. So.
Like Dave, you should be watching comedians in cars getting coffee.
So
that
good.
is a fantastic show. Just
I've
great
seen some episodes. Yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dave, there's so many excellent ones.
Yeah, like honestly, I think that is since his stand-up is so dated, I'd rather he just drive around and like talk to people in his cars. Like that's far more interesting to me.
I wouldn't say it's so. I think some of the bits were clearly written. Like he refers to like technology that like is a little outdated. Like there's one bit that I know he does that I know he's done before that features a top-loading washing machine. And
they still make those?
They still make those, but it's like I guess for me personally, go ahead, Joanna.
my washing machine is top loaded.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm just having, I guess, I don't know.
Front-loading machines? Who are these people?
By the way, front-loading machines are so much better for the environment.
That's what I'm saying.
Plus,
That's what I'm saying. You know, you got to incorporate the front-loading machines into the bit now.
you got
Anyway.
to do it.
So anyway,
Oh,
Also,
left
the dual
socks.
washing machines, like the ones that wash two things at once. It's the future, guys.
as my point illustrates, these are very minor nits. It's not really like didn't kill it at all for me. But yeah, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I'll try to check that out. A lot of like Larry David's Seinfeld-esque stuff. Like I'm looking forward to the new Curb Your Enthusiasm season. Joanna, are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan?
Yeah, I dabble. In
You
Curb.
dabble.
I was at the Television Critics Association summer press tour, and I don't know if you guys or your listeners know exactly what happens there, but basically TV critics are cooped up in a ballroom for like over 2 weeks, listening to panel after panel after panel about all the new TV shows. And so you start losing your mind and you get really bored and all that sort of stuff like that. And then Larry David came up and just basically started heckling the audience, and it was like the best thing that's ever happened. He just started yelling at everyone, and it was delightful. And then you just realize how much you miss Larry David and Curb, and you're really excited it's coming back. So,
Yeah,
yep.
I'm psyched. HBO coming back this fall. Very excited. All right, that's what I've been watching. Jerry, before Seinfeld, it's on Netflix. Devindra Hardawar, what have you been watching?
I have seen Star Trek Discovery. Guys, the show exists. It's a thing that you can find. You have to find it on the internet because you can't really find it on your TV. But it's here. It's kind of amazing. I am honestly, like Dave, you're the person who should be talking about this because you're the big Trekkie. I'm really not. But I've been anticipating the show for a while just because I am a huge Brian Fuller fanboy. I will watch anything this guy's attached to.
But he's
And,
not attached to it.
Yeah,
Well, he was.
He was.
It's a whole thing.
And he
So
wrote
this
the-
show kind of go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say he wrote script the first two. He wrote two
Yeah.
scripts. They're not saying exactly how much of his original two scripts exists, but it's possible that what Devindra and I both watched on Sunday, the
Mhm.
2 episodes, were Fuller-esque at least.
And
Yeah.
they're
So
definitely,
Brian
like, the
Fuller, he's the
Fuller-
guy behind
Mhm.
Pushing Daisies, Hannibal, and I want to say American Gods. Was it? Yeah.
Dave Chen's favorite show.
My favorite
American
show.
Gods.
No, I actually hate that show. But yeah. So Brian Fuller has a lot of fans online, and I was very curious as to how this Star Trek Discovery would go. But I could not get to the point where I was going to pay money to subscribe to CBS All Access.
Same.
Was my biggest
Really?
problem.
That was
Really?
my stumbling block too. I was
Yeah.
I literally was
Yeah.
sitting there on my Apple TV with the app, and it was like $6, and I was like, hover. No, fuck you. I'm not doing this.
I mean, I get that, and we are definitely like in the midst like streaming service fatigue right now, right? I'm juggling so many accounts right now just because I'm following a bunch of shows. It's ridiculous. At the same time, how long has it been since there's been a Star Trek TV show? Like if I don't know, like the fans, guys, like if you don't want to support All Access, there are other ways to get it too. Like you can just like subscribe to the season pass on iTunes or something. There are ways to get it and support. I am a big believer in supporting the things I love. And I think for something like this with such a devoted fan base, I'm surprised by how many people who are complaining about having to pay for it. But I do have. Yeah, go ahead.
The thing that bothered me. Oh, I'm sorry, Johanna. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that I was on your side, Devindra, until I looked at the release schedule and saw they're splitting the season.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
just
fucked up.
So
Squeeze
that's
more dollars out of you.
That's rough. So like I did sign up for All Access, and I said this on Twitter, but I signed up for like the commercial free, which is $10 a month. But something that someone brought up to me on Twitter that didn't occur to me, but apparently a lot of people do this with like signing up for various streaming services, is just wait till the season's over,
Yeah.
pay for 1 month, and then
Marathon the
binge
whole
it.
thing.
You could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You could do
So
that.
I mean, I agree with
Hate that
Devindra.
system.
Yeah.
I am very much for like paying. Like we come from a time when we would go to the video store and pay money to rent in each individual movie, which is like crazy to some people now. But like, so yeah, paying for something for sure. But yeah, this split schedule is really making me
It's
face
kind of
now.
shitty. I mean, but it's other shows have done, I guess, similar things too. So I did the whole All Access thing when The Good Fight was on CBS earlier this year, and that was their first original show. That show is fantastic. So good, and nobody has seen it because very few people have All Access. So
the thing that ticked me off was when I was reading about it online. I was like, is there any other way for me to get this? Because I know it's on Netflix internationally. So I was like, well, is there any other way? And I was reading all these articles about CBS All Access, and they were saying the real value proposition is all of the other CBS shows you get.
Ooh.
And I was like,
all the other CBS
Young Sheldon.
Young Sheldon.
Young
Screw
Sheldon.
you.
Come on.
well, that was the tipping point. I was like, no, I am not. How dare you? I will not be paying for Big Bang Theory. And
I think you're forgetting 337 episodes of CSI. Like that's really the main selling point there.
And all the really old shows in CBS's catalog too, like all the really old sitcoms, really, really old stuff. So if anybody does do All Access, by the way, watch The Good Fight, which is the kind of follow-up spin-off from The Good Wife. Yeah. Also worth watching. You don't need to have seen The Good Wife to really get it, but also good. This show. Let's just talk about the show.
Yeah, enough about how terrible CBS All Access is.
Let's just talk about the show.
Let's talk about Star Trek Discovery.
Good place, good show, good this, good that, good wife. You're about
The Good Doctor. There's The Good Doctor now. Yeah. This show is good. I'll say that. I've seen the first 2 episodes. For some reason, CBS just aired the first episode on the actual network Sunday night, even though the 2 episodes that are on All Access right now are clearly a 2-parter. Like they're a short movie. They're like a 90-minute Star Trek movie. What's up?
That makes a lot of sense, right? They aired an hour. It ends on a tremendous cliffhanger, that first hour, and then you're like, to see what happens next. Plunk down your $6. Okay,
I get, to that. To that respect, yeah, it makes sense. I don't think that the first episode isn't great on its own, but I think together they built a really interesting, compelling story. So I just want to say I really like what's happening here. Like I like everything about the show. I've never really attached myself to a Star Trek show. I've tried to start Next Generation several times, and then people tell me you gotta go past a whole season of crap before you get to the good stuff. And I was just like never into Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all that stuff. I've tried Star Trek many times, never really got into it. This show, I am completely on board, at least with what they're doing right now. I love the lead character, played by Sonequa Martin Green, who is apparently it's a rare time that the lead of the Star Trek show isn't a captain.
The only time, yeah.
Yeah, the only time, right? She is a first officer, right? She's the second in command to Michelle Yeoh's captain, early on in the show, and I just love their dynamic. There were scenes where these 2 women of color were fucking traveling through space and kicking ass and adventuring, and I was tearing up a little. Like I just loved all of that. But yeah, these 2 episodes build up who this character is. Her name is Michael Burnham. And that is a little Brian Fuller thing. Like he likes to give his female characters male names. Yeah, I like Chuck. But the series really is all about the emergence of a Klingon threat. And I kind of love the way this is all portrayed because, I'm not big into the Star Trek mythology, but I love the way the Klingons are here as sort of like a they're almost portrayed as like a very the thing uniting them is like a nationalistic fervor. It is somebody who's like claiming he has the one true way to unite all the Klingon tribes. There's a lot of like religious devotion going on there. There's a lot of things that feel relevant to today. And this is the new threat that the Federation is facing. I find all that pretty compelling. I really like the characters. Just a great cast here. Doug Jones is in the series as Lieutenant Saru, who is first of all, Doug Jones, whenever he plays a character, amazing to watch. His character here looks a lot like the skinny, the pale man. It's hard to get that image out of your mind, but he is fantastic, and he's a character who's also terrified of everything. Like he's extremely risk averse, and that's like his main race's trait. I found that all pretty good. Just really like the dynamic here between Sonequa Martin Green and Michelle Yeoh. They build up, like, there are arcs here. They're just fantastic. Some of the Klingons we meet, there is complete arcs here for who these characters are and kind of how they influence where the series is going. And I really appreciated that. And the series looks fantastic. Kind of is a cross between the Battlestar Galactica dark aesthetic and the J.J. Abrams crazy camera angles and lens flare all over the place aesthetic. Beautiful at times. There's some like green screen stuff that doesn't work. Overall, I am really on board. Like, this show has definitely done things I've never seen before in Star Trek, given the episodes I've seen. It feels like it's breaking rules. It feels like it's taking chances. And that all sounds pretty good to me. So I can't wait to see the rest.
Joanna Robinson, sounds like you've also seen first episode or two of the show.
Yeah, sorry to keep horning in on what
I
was trying to say. I grew up watching all of, the original series of Next Generation. That was like my bonding thing with my sister. So I was really excited for this series, or cautiously optimistic for this series. I was disappointed when Brian Fuller got pushed out, and I'm just I agree with almost everything Devindra says, but also very wary of this whole, like, it feels so calculated. It feels like they're selling us something.
Yeah.
Matt Myra, who's hosting this, it's basically like The Talking Dead, but for Star Trek, called After Trek. Matt Myra sort of floated the idea that these 2 hours were basically like one long cold open for what the series will actually be. And one of the co-creators agreed with that. He was like, yeah, this is the kind of thing where we could have told this in flashback. This could just be flashback for the Michael Burnham character.
It's an introductory movie, basically.
Yeah. Which, Battlestar did as well. But then I'm, knowing that Brian Fuller wrote 2 scripts, and then knowing, I will not spoil anything because I know we don't do this on this podcast, but like knowing that the world is very different at the end of those 2 hours than it was at the beginning of those 2 hours. Yeah. You almost wondering what the show will actually be.
Yeah. Right. I've heard the third episode is a stark contrast to these.
Yeah. And so I don't know if I can recommend these 2 hours, but I don't know if I feel comfortable recommending the series because there's just some dramatic things that happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's always the case at the beginning of any show. All I can say is right now I'm on board. I may, give up at some point, but I'm super into whatever is happening right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question, Devindra? Are you just subscribing to CBS All Access for this show?
Right now, yeah.
So if you give up on this, you'll just cancel your subscription? Is that...
Yes, and you can do that super easily, especially from from iTunes. It's very easy to manage all of your subscriptions. I'd really recommend people do that. If you're not watching Twin Peaks anymore and you don't need Showtime, save that $15 and put it towards something that you'll be watching. And it's very easy to manage all that stuff.
Joanna, are you gonna cancel or are you gonna keep subscribing till the end?
CBS All Access?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like Devindra. I'm in it as long as the show is doing it for me. And when it's not, then I will quit. But something I worry about and maybe should worry about for myself are like the lazy people like me who will like forget to cancel.
That's what they get on.
And keep going.
Yeah.
Or also the fact, so I believe that this run will end at the end of October. Or it might even be cynically 1 week into November. So you have to do the November month. And then you could cancel for December. But why cancel December when you're just going to re-enroll in January again? That kind of stuff, which feels so precisely calculated to squeeze all the $6 and $10 fees out of people, does trouble me a little bit.
As a strategy, I think it's really shitty. I don't think All Access, I've been testing All Access before it even officially launched. It has been a shitty experience for a very long time, and CBS hasn't done much to fix that. So yeah, I totally agree. This is all very calculated to try to get subscriptions for this thing. At the same time, there are other ways to access it. If you're international, you don't even have to worry about this whole mess. It's the rare time the international crowd gets treated better than the U.S. crowd.
What's that thing that 30% of all gift cards go unclaimed? 18% of the people that have gym memberships use it regularly. It's all the same gamble.
CBS All Access is the gym membership of the video streaming world, basically.
Yes. Yes.
It's that thing that you get because people tell you it's good for you, and then you just never use it for many, many months until you eventually cancel it ignominiously. All that said, the show sounds good, Devindra.
It is. It could have been Trash Fire. It's not, but we'll see where it goes.
All right. What else do you watch? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jonah.
Well, I just have a lot of spoiler thoughts on it. I don't know where to put it, but I'll put them somewhere someday for you guys to access them. So.
Yeah, it sounds like I hear what you're thinking about, Joanna, but okay.
All right. Devindra, what else have you been watching?
also have been checking out the second season of The Good Place. And I just want to say, I love the show. Glad it's back. This is a tough show to talk about because I can't mention anything from season 2 without really saying what happened in season 1. So all I can say is The Good Place season 2 is fantastic. But you really need to watch season 1. It's pretty short. It's tremendous. It's so sweet. Ted Danson, everybody. Ted Danson in bow ties, just being silly. Has a great premise. The premise is basically Kristen Bell is playing a character who was basically sent to heaven by mistake, and she's trying to figure out how to keep that hidden. While at the same time it seems like she's destroying the world around her there. Really great premise. Very funny, very sweet, like sweeter than most things on TV. I guess not surprising because also co-created by one of the people from Parks and Rec. Season 2 really builds on the premise, but I can't. This is a rare thing, right? Like I can't say anything about how season 2 is going or what is actually happening without saying what's spoiled at the end of season 1. Yeah, what's up?
Can I try?
Sure.
I'll say this.
Sure.
Something happens at the end of season 1
Mhm.
that threw into like question whether or not they could even reasonably do a season 2.
This is true. Yeah.
And I would say from the first episode, which was like an hour long as a 2-parter, for me dispelled those concerns.
Oh yeah.
So
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Unlike other shows.
So Joanna, you're also a fan of The Good Place on NBC?
yeah, I mean, I do think a little like, there is a thing that happens at the end of season 1. I think some critics have gone a little bit overboard talking about how like mind-blowing it is. Like it's rare to have like a big twist in a sitcom, so that's
I'm trying not to build it up too much, but yeah.
Worth talking about. But yeah, just go like temper your expectations about the it's hard. It is hard to talk about.
Do
but,
not read anything about season 2. That's the one takeaway from this conversation.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
We can't tell you why, but it's a good show.
All right. Well, that's The Good Place, and season 2 is on NBC. Devindra, what else have you been watching?
Also, just briefly wanted to mention Toast of London, which is a new show that just hit Netflix. It's a British series a lot of people have been telling me about because I'm a big Matt Berry fan. And Matt Berry from, The IT Crowd, The Mighty Boosh. Love this man. Love pretty much everything he's in. This show is about him as sort of a struggling actor in London, just trying to scrape a living and dealing with like a crazy bunch of characters. Like it's a very British sitcom, but it's Matt Berry. It's kind of all centered around him. If you like his stuff, I would highly recommend it. If you just like very, very British sitcoms, it's really good. It's quirky, it's funny, lots of sight gags, but definitely a good way to pass the time.
That's Toast of London. It's on Netflix right now. And Devindra, you also reviewed the Apple TV 4K, right? The new Apple TV, yeah?
I am in the midst of reviewing that, and people have been asking me about it. Just want to say, if you've been holding off on getting an Apple TV and you have a 4K set, this is definitely a good device for you. It works just like the last one, except now there are 4K movies. And, Apple's doing some interesting things because if you have a 4K HDR TV, there's a thing that happens when you watch an HDR movie. Your TV kind of blinks in and out for like a second or a couple of seconds because there's a lot of mode shifting and stuff happening behind the scenes. Kind of a weird, awkward experience. So what Apple did with this box, they kind of just forced HDR all the time. So you don't have any of that blinkiness. And just jumping into something HDR is very smooth. Right now they have like over 120 films in iTunes. And Netflix is the only app that supports 4K at this point, but I'm sure more are coming. It just kind of is up to Apple to negotiate those deals. The movies look great, and the most important thing here is that Apple has really kicked the industry's ass when it comes to pricing, because the movies are no different than HD prices. So that's $15 to $20 for 4K purchases.
Yeah, and apparently existing movies get upgraded for free, right? Which is pretty crazy if you think about it. It would be like when Blu-ray came out, Sony was like, everyone gets a free Blu-ray,
We'll just replace your DVD library.
Yeah, we'll just replace your DVDs and Blu-rays. Cool. I don't think that applies to every movie. So, for instance, if there's like a remaster, like there's probably going to be a new Close Encounters release from the recent remaster, right? That's probably won't get that. If it's a whole new release, if it's a whole separate SKU, you probably won't get it.
But I had a library of about 50 iTunes movies, and several things I bought, like Star Trek Beyond, Kingsman. Lego Movie were all upgraded for free, and that was really nice to see. Like I've been slowly kind of rebuilding my physical movie library with 4K Blu-rays. But these things look almost as good, and HDR is fantastic. The only downside to the Apple TV 4K is that some of the HDR processing seems a little weird. Some people with certain TVs may not work correctly, or may make some content look strange. And the other thing is they don't support any of the newer audio formats. So theater geeks, like if you like Dolby Atmos, I have one of those setups. You won't be getting any of that from the Apple TV 4K yet. Hopefully that'll change. And they also need to support 4K on YouTube. Right now, Apple doesn't support that codec, which is that's annoying because there's a lot of great, just free 4K content floating around YouTube. So
I like
really
watching my MKBHD in 4K for sure.
You gotta, yeah, MKBHD in 4K. He's not doing HDR yet.
Yeah. Well, you know what, guys? I mean, watching stuff in 4K is really important. But you know what, Jeff? I hear that audio is also important. Do you hear that as well?
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you transition me? I was readying the world's greatest transition, and Dave just transitions for me.
I stole it right out from under you.
It's like none of the rest of us are going to talk about what we've been watching.
Away from Dave.
Yeah.
Yes, Dave. Hearing is very important. Yes. That's why I have Sonos. Honestly, I bought Sonos back in April, and it is one of the best things I did in my new house. I bought the Playbase, which is the centerpiece of my home theater, but it's also the centerpiece of now my music consumption as well. You know what? I bought just recently. Actually, my wife gave it to me as a Father's Day gift. Or no, Father's Day. Well, that was longer ago. What happened more
Birthday?
recently? She gave it to me. No, maybe it was anniversary gift. I don't know. Anyway, she gave it to me as a gift. Was the Sonos Connect, which allowed me to connect our old analog turntable to my Sonos sound system. So all of our vinyl now can be played through the surround system, through the Playbase, through our Play Ones as rear speakers. So it's such a versatile modular system. You can really set it up however you want, set up rooms the way you want. But all of that wouldn't matter if the sound wasn't great. And it is truly the best sound system I've ever had in my entire life. I'm so pleased. I love showing it off. I love cranking it up. I have the Sonos Sub, which is the subwoofer. It just rocks. And watching movies, you guys can attest to that, right? Watching movies in your surround sound on your Sonos, unparalleled, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where whenever I'm watching a movie that doesn't have Sonos, it feels like an inferior experience. I mean, that is
you at your friend's house, you just stand up and march out of the room and say, "I'm going home to my Sonos."
Yes, exactly in those words. That's exactly right. It's fantastic. I have the Playbase too, and I also have two Play Ones that create like this kind of 5.1 surround sound, and with the sub, it sounds awesome. I listen to everything. Like it's one of those things where I look forward to listening to things. You know what I mean? Because I can hear them on the Sonos.
Did you guys hear about that study, by the way? Houses that play live music more have more sex. So I'm just gonna put that right there.
Yeah.
You know what?
How about that?
I can anecdotally I can say that's thumbs up to that.
Sonos, play sexy time.
Thank you, Sonos. Hey, the best news is we can help you on that tip too, people. If you want to be indignant to your friends like Dave Chen or get funky like Devendra Hardawar, why don't you get your own Sonos? We're going to help you out. We're going to give you – this is really cool. Sonos is doing a very special thing just for Slash Filmcast listeners. Any order on Sonos.com up to $2,500. So any order $2,500 or less for any product on Sonos.com, 10% off. All you got to do is use our promo code. That's Filmcast10. It's a capital FILMCAST and then 10 on Sonos.com. Gets you 10% off any order of $2,500 or less. Of course, this is available for only a limited time and cannot be combined with any other discounts or promotions. But what a great deal. Upgrade your sound. Listen to you. Honestly, it takes hearing to believe how good this is with no wires. You just plug it into an outlet and you don't have, it's all wireless. it's more convenient, easier to use, and sounds better than anything I've ever had before. So I'm a very happy Sonos customer myself, and I hope you guys will be too. We're so glad that they've sponsored the Slash Filmcast.
Jeff, just out of curiosity, what was your transition going to be?
You don't get to hear it now, Dave. maybe next week.
All right.
Well, it was pretty perfect, right? Right from Apple TV.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, what have you been watching?
I've been also listening to things, Dave, with a great sound system. Oh, wait. Sorry, we did that already. I have actually, this is an amazing thing to listen to. My wife and I started watching the new Ken Burns, Lynn Novick documentary, Vietnam. This is a 18-hour, I believe, documentary. So we've just scratched the surface of it, but it is tremendous. If you've ever experienced any of the Ken Burns, Lynn Novick joints in the past, they are incredibly detailed, deep dives into topics, giving you context, really making you understand the history, but doing it in a way that's very palatable and very entertaining. It doesn't feel dry, and some documentaries, especially historical documentaries, can feel like you're in school, which not something I usually mind, but some people do. This is wall to wall with the sound of that time, the music that they got the rights to. They managed to approach a lot of these 60s artists because, during Vietnam, it was an amazing time for music. And they approached these artists and got them to give up the rights to their music at just a small cost. And so it's wall to wall with some of the most incredible music. The other thing that they did that is absolutely incredible, and you don't even really realize it as you're watching it, but they had so much footage that's never been seen before. They put this thing together over 10 years. They went and got all this archival footage that no one's ever seen before. They went and got Vietnamese footage that people haven't seen. So they're really showing it from both sides. But most of that footage was MOS, had no audio track. It was just visual footage. And they painstakingly built beds of audio to create a audiovisual experience. And they researched the exact sound of the guns that you need to see, and the tanks and the helicopters and all the stuff that you're seeing. And they made it seem as if these pieces of video, these film strips that they found, actually had audio tracks with them. It's an extraordinarily painstaking amount of work that they put in, and it really makes it feel more real and makes you feel like you're actually watching, real footage from that time that had this all along. But more than that, more than all of the sort of wizardry and the amount of effort and the comprehensive nature of what they put together, which is staggering. More than that, A, it's fascinating, and B, it is directly applicable to what's going on now. It is shocking what was happening in the White House. You had a leader who was paranoid and who was going into this war for all the wrong reasons and staying in it. There's a lot of crazy parallels to things that are much more contemporary. There is, just the staggering amount of loss of life. We have these weird belligerent statements on both sides talking about wiping North Korea off the map. And you think about what was done in South Vietnam and what a massive loss of life that was for an entire generation of people on both sides. And you really get both sides from this. I couldn't help but be moved just in the first couple of episodes, seeing the perspective of the Vietnamese and how much death was caused for really no reason in this intractable situation, and thinking, oh my God, we could just flippantly talk about wiping a country off the map with all of its people. How many hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed in Vietnam? They said 1 million people lost their lives just there. It's a staggering piece of work, and it is one that will resonate with me forever. It has educated me about that time period that isn't that long ago, right? My dad lived through it, and I'm sure many of our listeners have relatives that lived through it, and to be able to do such a comprehensive look at that time period with so many people that were there that you can go and interview, it's amazing.
All right, that's Ken Burns and Lynn Novik's Vietnam. And Jeff, how are you watching that? Is it on PBS?
It is on PBS. I downloaded the PBS app on my Apple TV, and I find it to be really cool, really easy to use. You just link it. It's free. You just link it through your PC or mobile device, and you have access to any of the episodes that have aired at any time.
Super cool. Again, that's Vietnam, and it's on PBS. Joanna Robinson, I depend on you to learn what's going on in TV, to recommend some things. And after Jeff's massive recommendation of this huge towering work of importance.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you've been watching this week.
Yeah, like as I promised before we started recording, guys, I'm here to elevate the conversation. I mean, Vietnam documentaries are fun and good, but what about an animated series about ducks, guys?
Exactly. That's all we have to say.
I've been watching the new Disney XD series DuckTales. I sort of skipped it for a while, and then there was just enough hype around it that I decided to watch it. And I grew up watching DuckTales and Tailspin and Darkwing Duck and all that great stuff. But this is a DuckTales for a new generation, with David Tennant voicing Scrooge McDuck, and you've got Bobby Moynihan, Danny Pudi from Community, and man, I forget his name. I'm gonna look it up while I'm talking. But voicing Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Kate McCucci is this little girl Webby. Anyway, point being, they go on adventures. It's surprisingly sharp and delightful. One of the writers on the show is Noelle Stevenson, who your listeners might know. She wrote on the comic Lumberjanes, and also she wrote the graphic novel Nimona, which was like a New York Times bestseller. And she's really good at doing this like light but progressive storytelling about kids. Ben Schwartz plays Dewey Duck.
I love Ben Schwartz.
And I know I love Ben Schwartz. I don't know why his name went out of my head. And it's just like, it's those people, like Jim Rash from Community is doing a voice. Beck Bennett from Saturday Night Live is Lunchpad McQuack. You'll recognize all the voices of.
I'm sure kids
people.
are going to be really excited about this casting.
I think they're most
so
excited about Margot Martindale, who's playing Ma Beagle. She's basically doing Mags Bennett from Justified, like the exact same character. Man.
It is as if Netflix cast this to be, Oscar bait, and it's a kids animated series.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, so my point is, and parents have been telling me this for years with shows like I love Steven Universe, but parents swear to me that like the My Little Pony that had like a run a couple years ago was amazing. Just really good on a level for kids, but then also on a really enjoyable level for adults. So you might just want to give it a whirl. It doesn't it's not really like putting me off in a sort of this is too nostalgic sort of way, because I don't have a lot of memory of DuckTales. I remember the characters, but I'm not like, well, the DuckTales lore and blah, 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 And
is the giant pit of money there?
It's there. They swim in it.
That's all I care about.
The theme song is the beginning and the end of the nostalgia is really.
There you go.
The theme song is also there. David Tennant is freaking great as Scrooge McDuck. So,
Well, I'm just glad that every day they're out there making DuckTales. Woo.
I mean,
Tales of Daring Do, Bad and Good DuckTales.
Bad and Good Luck Tales. Yeah.
Guys, I've said a lot of things on the show, both good and bad, that have gotten a lot of reaction. But I've never said anything on the show that has gotten more Twitter reaction than when I said it as Donald Duck. People, I just love the fact that you brought this up, because it gives me a chance to maybe do my Donald Duck again.
Yes.
If there's enough. If children, put your hands together. Would you like to hear Donald Duck come out right now?
Do you believe in fairies?
I do. I'm clapping.
Okay, everybody, what do you want me to say? I'll put out children. Anything. Hello.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Yeah, that's great, Jeff.
Maybe we should
David on his press.
assassinate the guy who does, because Donald Duck is a main character in
Yeah.
DuckTales.
You know,
Which
Joanna,
is-
I was thinking the same thing.
Were you
Jeff,
thinking
Jeff,
about
this is
killing
your
a voice
next career
actor?
path.
Listen, guys, listen. Everybody listening to this, take a vow of silence. We are going to murder the guy doing DuckTales. You're going to install me, and no one will know. It'll be
Oh.
seamless. And we are all in a blood pact now.
Oh, guys,
You
it's
are
so
now.
fun. What if,
You're all accomplices.
what if that person actually dies horribly in real life? Then we'll feel bad about making this joke, guys.
Oh my God, Tony Anselmo, wherever you are, stay alive.
Yes, we're just
Or else
kidding,
we're
Tony
all
Anselmo.
implicated.
Yes, we're all
Yeah,
implicated.
you're all accomplices just because you downloaded this episode. Sorry.
Also, we're all big fans of Tony Anselmo, Jeff most of all. So
Yeah, I'm black.
okay, okay, guys, I'm gonna pull an audible here. All right, we're an hour into this episode. We gotta get going. We gotta get
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
to our review of Kingsman. Before we do that, want to thank all the people that donated to the podcast. Thanks to Tobias from Germany, Arthur Wickoff, and Jamie from Vancouver, British Columbia. Thanks also to new subscribers, Adam Selby, at the rate of $2 per month. Thanks so much to everyone who contributes to this podcast and helps us defray the cost of seeing movies and putting on the show. You can always help us out by going to slashfilm.com, click on the /filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page, or go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/ and then the word filmcast. Thanks so much, everyone. And let's get to our review of Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Nicely done, Jeff.
You
That-
only give me kudos when the recording is off. You notice.
Yeah, that's right. Let's, here we go. That was from the trailer of Kingsman: The Golden Circle, a newest film by director Matthew Vaughn. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. When their headquarters are destroyed and the world is held hostage, the Kingsman's journey. Hold on, let me just do this again. When their headquarters are destroyed and the world is held hostage, the Kingsman's journey leads them to the discovery of an allied spy organization in the U.S. These two elite secret organizations must band together to defeat a common enemy. So I'm going to say right up top, before we get to this review, that there is a major character that's introduced in Kingsman: The Golden Circle who appears prominently in the trailers and
Yeah.
is arguably a spoiler to give away that this character is in the movie. But we are going to give it away because he's in the trailer. He's one of the very first poster art images.
Yeah. If the studio
In-
can't keep it secret,
Yeah.
I don't feel beholden to that.
Is in fact the image you chose for this very live chat.
Yeah.
He's there.
Good job.
Yeah,
Did
my
not
mistake.
think this one through.
Can we also say at the top, right at the top, enough with the John Denver Hollywood? It was cute. It was cute when we were in a Denver Assance. Now it's an epidemic.
I have
It is-
more to say about that in spoilers,
Yeah,
but I
let's
will
talk about that
say
in spoilers, but I did not hate this.
I will
I
say
loved
that the
it.
movie
Yeah.
opens with a bagpipe rendition of John Denver's "Take Me Home, Country Road," and I just thought to myself, "Is that John Denver? Is this really like the
Not
fifth
again.
movie
Not
I've seen this
again.
year?"
But
that
it's not
features-
just that. It's not just that these movies have that
Yeah,
music.
it's-
All of these movies, central plot point. To
Yes,
the movie
it is
the music.
central
This-
plot point. Yeah, agreed. Anyway,
This is also a movie where John Denver tracks also coexist with Prince. This movie has
Right.
everything.
Don't-
guys.
this
Do not get me started
Yeah.
on that.
okay.
There's
Okay,
no-
well,
there's
I
no
want
bigger-
I want to get you started on it, Jeff. But
Yes.
first, I'm going to get Joanna Robinson started on her thoughts on this
Oh.
movie. Joanna, I don't know if I heard what your opinion of the original Kingsman was.
Oh my god.
But yeah,
Okay.
drop some knowledge on us.
I love Kingsman. First, well, really quickly, I want to say if you're listening to this and you haven't noticed all the John Denver and all the movies, though probably you guys have brought it up on the Slash Filmcast before. Karen Hahn wrote a great piece on Vulture, why is John Denver's music in so many movies this year, running through all the various things. So I love John Denver.
Short version, his estate has started licensing it out pretty aggressively, and many people have been happy to oblige them.
I
think
used to
that's-
love John
was
Denver.
that your takeaway? I thought it was just sort of they said that they got an uptick in request. It wasn't that they were like
Huh.
the aggressors. That
Okay,
they
I got to go back and
were separate.
I'll link to it in the show notes. I got to go back
was
and
like
reread that article. I did read that
Denver
article.
fire sale. They're just like everything must go. All Denver
99
must
cent
go.
licenses. Yeah.
I call the Kingsman franchise my problematic fave franchise. Because I loved the first one, and everyone's like, that terrible joke at the end, ruined everything. And I was like, nope, I'm on board for it. So I love the first one, and I really enjoyed this one. I actually saw it twice this weekend with like two different friend groups wanted to see it, and it's like a really fun movie to watch with friends. And so I happily went back a second time. I hear all of the criticisms that people have. I don't disagree. I have one like a fairly major bone to pick, and it's actually probably not the one you're thinking of, but
It doesn't have to do with a vagina camera.
it's not that. So
Amazing.
we can talk
Wow.
about that. But there's something about this franchise, and like my colleague at Vanity Fair, Richard Lawson, wrote this great review where he sort of admitted that like not only does he consider Kingsman his problematic fave, but he admitted he's like, I think Taron Egerton's really cute. And that definitely flavors my opinion of this. And he wrote about it in like the anti like sort of creepy way that some like film critics can sometimes write about, like, I have a crush on the lead and that's why I like this. He did a really good job of deconstructing that particular like approach to a movie. So I will say, hopefully in a non-creepy way, that the liberal use of Pedro Pascal in this movie has perhaps made me a biased observer of Kingsman.
That's why you saw it
Golden
twice.
Circle.
Yeah.
Yes, once for Pedro, the second time for Pascal. Yes.
Nice.
Well done.
So,
All right, Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Kingsman: The Golden Circle?
Well, you know, I will reinforce what Joanna was saying as far as there's something. My wife loves this series. We went to the first one together before we had a child, and we both loved it. I remember raving about it on the show, and my wife loved it as well. And now that we have a 1-year-old, it's very difficult for her to ever go to the movies at all, let alone with me. But this was one where she said, hey, when that movie comes around, I know you guys are going to review it. I need to go with you to see this. We'll get a babysitter. We got my mother-in-law to come and babysit. Like, it was a whole to-do. It was a whole thing because she wanted to see this movie so bad. She loves it. So there's something about it that you know, she's right there with you. I would say, first of all, the Prince thing. I can't not talk about the Prince thing.
Right. So this is the first film ever, I think,
Yes.
since
other than his films.
his films,
Purple
right.
Rain, Under a Cherry Moon, yeah.
Right.
So
that feature this is the first film that has featured a licensed Prince track in the movie.
It is. I am a huge Prince fan. Huge. Like, huge. And there's no bigger display that he's dead than the fact that this song is in this movie.
Yeah.
It is
I kinda hear
it is
you,
a
yeah.
billboard that says Prince is dead.
Man.
And that fucking sucks, dude. He would never allow this. He would never let it happen. And it sucks that his estate now, whoever's controlling it, it's gonna be John Denver. It's gonna be and it's not even a fucking obscure Prince song. It's fucking Let's Go Crazy. It's like, how more on the nose could you be, Kingsman? Come on. Now this action sequence that it's scoring, for all intents and purposes, is a pretty cool one. But I was so distraught in that moment, just going, you're just saying Prince is dead.
Yeah.
Yay, we're dancing on his grave, literally. I don't know. Not literally, but you know what I mean.
You took this to a
Intensely.
dark place, Jeff, but I
Sorry.
also felt something similar. Like, oh, this is weird. Why is this happening now? Oh,
Because
that's
he's
why.
dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love Prince. So the movie, I think the first half of this movie is pretty bad. And I was really disappointed with it for like almost the first full half of the movie. It's meanders. There's like plot threads that are just goofy and really don't need to be there. And they're asking me to swallow giant weird. I mean, it's very comic booky, right?
Yeah.
Which I like. You know, I like that
Kicking pop
aesthetic.
stars. Yeah.
Yeah, but also like how a certain character comes back is like, really?
Oh,
Really?
It's,
Oh, come
what
on.
we're-
it's
that's what we're doing?
preposterous.
We'll have
but
to,
of course.
yeah, we'll have to talk about that more in spoilers. But yeah, I
Right.
disagree with you. But yeah,
But the movie really won me over with the second half. It's so fun in the second half, and it sort of recaptures the magic of the first movie in that second half with some really fun set pieces that show up. But the first half is just, it's so weirdly paced, and it meanders into areas that I don't think are interesting. And the premise of this one, which is like there are multiple Kingsmanses, and we'll get into spoilers, but I thought that was really clever. I like that world building thing. I just thought how it was built and the details of that weren't particularly interesting, and some of the plot machinations to make that necessary were really rushed and bizarre. I just thought the whole first half was just really clunky and poorly executed. But the movie really won me over in the second half, particularly Julianne Moore, who we haven't mentioned yet, is amazing in this movie. And there's some fun stuff that happens in that second half that just is too fun to ignore. But it certainly wasn't the supreme home run that I thought the first movie was.
Well, apparently there was a 3 hour and 40-minute long cut of this film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think that's
I can imagine.
I think that's pretty apparent, actually.
Yeah, it was almost split into two parts: the Golden Circle Part 1 and Part 2, like two separate
I think that would have
films.
probably been better.
Yeah, because there's many subplots that feel just completely interrupted and not fully fleshed out. And so some of the editing is a bit odd, and we can get into that more in spoilers. But yeah, all that said, for me, I'll just say very briefly, this is a movie that I felt like was fun. There was a big opening action scene, and then nothing for like an hour, like just no action for like an hour, and then it really finally picks up in the second half. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Jeff. This is a movie that I thought was pretty fun, but had no business whatsoever being 2 hours and 20 minutes long. Like Joanna Robinson, I wanted to see this movie again, but it just is so long. If it was like 1 hour and 45 minutes, maybe I would have seen it again. But then,
two 90-minute movies, like I didn't know that was a possibility, but two 90-minute movies, this would have been it would have been great.
Yeah, but instead it's
No, but it would have been like one movie that you didn't like, which is the first one.
Yeah,
probably.
One movie that you did.
Yeah, maybe he cut a bunch of action scenes out of the first half. But Devindra Hardawar, your thoughts on Kingsman: The Golden Circle?
I could definitely see where you guys are coming from. I can't. I don't know if it's the first half that's long, but it definitely feels overlong just overall. But at the same time, I had a lot of fun with this. I think it builds on the original in some really interesting ways, like that one little gag from the end of the movie is actually, this movie is all about him trying to like keep that relationship alive and trying to build that relationship. And I found that to be, I kind of gave props to the movie for that, because that's something, as much as these movies try to lampoon James Bond and everything, that's also something you really wouldn't see in a James Bond movie, right? Like him carrying that relationship across two movies and trying to build on it in a way. So I gave the movie a lot of respect for that.
It's almost subversive.
It's subversive by being somewhat mature about how it's treating this relationship. And like there's stuff to talk about in spoilers. There's definitely that one gross scene that we will all talk about that I think is grosser than anything Michael Bay has done. It is tremendously gross. But at the same time, like it's a ton of fun. Love most of the cast. Really sad that we lose certain characters I would have liked to see more from. And I'll have to wait for spoilers from that. I also have to say, I think the action is just a lot more coherent and a lot more well motivated in this movie than the first one. And part of the problem I had with the first movie, which I liked, but I didn't love it as much as you folks maybe. I think a lot of things, that church scene in the first Kingsman, that scene is a great tech demo. It is a great way to show that you can use CG to replace an older man and make him look like he's doing cool things. But it's also pretty incoherent, not really well motivated, and we didn't even really see the consequences of what happened there either. And I think this movie, in terms of like those big action sequences, it just does a lot better. I really liked all
disagree with everything, almost every word in the last
that
30
church
seconds.
That church sequence, you can rewatch that. And
yeah, no, I did rewatch it.
I understand, Dave. Like, I understand that just hits all of your triggers for like a fun action scene.
Devinger rewatched it in 4K. Everybody.
I also didn't have time to.
I did rewatch that scene in preparation for today, and I do think that it captures, for good or ill, everything about Kingsman that made it Kingsman. That is to say, it had this extremely flashy style of shooting, this mindless, gory violence being done by this guy in a great suit. And
amazing
glasses, and almost no attempt to deal with any of the consequences of these actions.
Yeah, that's exactly what Kingsman is. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it captures.
I'm saying no, though. I think this movie, in particular, when it comes to simple things like the relationship, like they turned an anal sex joke into a relationship that he's trying to save.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire movie. Like, I do think in some ways it subverts our expectations. That particular scene, I think, just because the first movie did a great job of building up Eggsy's like background, like his home life and kind of the class structure, like that movie did certain things really well, and I feel like that scene just always felt like it dropped the ball for me. I'm just saying, this movie, at least with these sequences, especially Pedro Pascal, who is fantastic.
So
I don't know what he is a cowboy in New York, but also, like, clearly he is a Latino man, but wearing the swagger of like a typical, white Western cowboy. Yeah,
it's totally Burt
Reynolds.
It's all so
good.
good. And I think he has probably the best action sequence in the movie too.
He has two of them, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe three if you want to count the third one. Anyway, I want to rebut what you said, Devinder, but I don't have to wait for the spoiler section.
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of the sequel grappling with the emotional fallout of large scale violence,
I disagree. I disagree about that scene. Like,
completely.
I think the church scene, for good or ill, and I remember being deeply uncomfortable with it when I first saw it, but
it is uncomfortable. Yeah.
For good or ill, like in many ways represents the first film, and I feel. And here's the thing: as problematic as that scene is, it's something I remember. It's something that like very very rarely has been done before. Nothing in the second movie rises to that level, in my opinion, in terms of how memorable it is, like visually inventive it is. And in fact, like the kind of floaty camera method they use for that scene, they use for many action scenes in this movie. And I felt it was a little overdone, this kind of speed ramping, omniscient camera, like where it kind of goes everywhere. Virtual camera.
It's a CG camera.
Yeah, kind of like a CG camera. It's used heavily in many action scenes in this movie. Didn't quite work for me. Like I can deal with it for like one scene in a movie or two scenes, but it felt like 3 or 4 scenes it was used. And
he definitely it feels like a signature style that Matthew Vaughn is trying to like cement for this series, and it's definitely going overboard. I agree.
Because it's not a Vaughn thing, because he definitely didn't have it in First Class. I don't remember it from Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
Also not in Stardust.
It feels like he was building up to it. Like Kick-Ass was such a low budget thing. Like this series is basically his, like, he is a kid in a candy store. He has a huge budget and he can do whatever he wants, and this is kind of his pure id right now.
Yeah,
I'm here for it, man.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I enjoyed myself. Just felt the movie was a little long, but what this movie series really does is it takes the campiness and silliness of the Bond films and it doubles down on them. It acknowledges it. It knows what it is. It says, like, I know how ridiculous this premise is, and we're going to just make it twice as ridiculous as you thought it was. And
but it also grounds all of that in, I think, decent emotional stakes, and that's important too.
I think actually I was like mildly moved by the relationship between Eggsy and another major character, in this movie, and that's some solid character work. So I would give it, like a B- or so. It wasn't a terrible movie, but I also think Kingsman 1 had a lot going for it, which is that it had a level of novelty that I don't think this movie has.
Element of surprise,
right? Element of surprise, and just like we've already seen that before. The plot, the evil plot of this movie is quite similar to the evil plot of the first film. And so
Same thing with the Guardians, by the way, right? Like the novelty of that first movie,
Right, yeah.
The sequel couldn't quite recapture that.
There is this kind of
yeah.
novelty aspect that you're like, when you see something that's just bold and new come out of nowhere, you kind of give it a little bit of a bump in your mind in terms of like how highly you think of it. And then when this one comes out, it doesn't do that much new. It introduces all these new characters, but in my opinion, doesn't do that much with them. I mean, I think Academy Award winner Halle Berry is wasted in this movie, as is
She's
Channing
definitely
Tatum.
wasted herself more in other films.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, this is not the most egregious waste of Halle Berry I've seen post Oscar.
Yeah. This is definitely better than Catwoman. In between Catwoman and this movie, this is definitely a better movie.
It is weird that it seemed like they got whoever they wanted casting wise. Like they literally could just take their pick of the most appropriate big name actor for any tiny little part, and they didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, it feels like Channing Tatum was totally wasted in this movie. Joanna,
can I talk about the
yeah.
Channing Tatum thing?
We may have to wait for spoilers.
Yeah,
for some of that.
let's just get the spoilers. Oh, go ahead, Joanna.
Okay. No, I can wait.
Okay, let's just get to spoilers now, guys, because we have a lot more to discuss. So, spoilers for Kingsman: The Golden Circle starting right now. Jonah Robinson, tell us about the Channing Tatum thing, as you said.
The Channing Tatum thing is like, I suspected this when I was watching this. I was like, Channing was barely there. That's
I like how you're on a first name basis with Channing. That's cool.
Yeah, C-Tates was barely there. That's
there should be some sort of flag on the field for even advertising him in the movie. All the posters are like him standing back to back with all the other characters. Is like
that's
not
the thing.
fair.
Is like
Can't do that.
He originally had a much bigger part, and that's like they've said that he had a much bigger part. He, like, in the footage that they showed at CinemaCon last year, he had the lasso. So I don't know if he was gonna have the lasso and everything, but like he had the lasso, and then a scheduling thing happened, and they had to like lose Channing Tatum. And so like I think the
literally put him in
they put him on ice. They put Channing on ice. They gave the whip to Pedro, and that's like, so there's a lot of funkiness, I think, around like Pedro's character sort of like stepping up out of nowhere to defend them in the bar, but then it's double crossing that, like all this sort of stuff is just sort of like that should have been Channing Tatum in that scene, because he's the one sort of with a relationship with them, and all that sort of stuff. So that's, I think, what happened. The side effect of that, I mean, so it's ridiculous that Channing Tatum is front and center on all the posters. His name is up there, stuff like that. Pedro Pascal's isn't. His name is not on the poster. He's not on most of the posters. So that's like an injustice, huge injustice. Yeah. But
who is holding the lasso in the Coming Soon poster, by the way? That's what I'm looking at. I guess it is. It looks like Channing.
That's funny.
Yeah. Just even in the early ads. Yeah.
So the side benefit being we got more Pedro Pascal, which I'm on record as saying is great. The other thing that I want to address that you said,
made that very clear. Yes.
Do you guys get it yet? Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that what Devendra said, I think the fallout from the complete eradication of the Kingsmen and Eggsy's friend and his dog is just like vapor in this movie. Like he gives toasts, and when he like kills Charlie, he's like, this is for this, but like that huge mass scale violence is really not dealt with as far as I'm concerned, and
it isn't earned on the front end either. Like how she finds them she could just flip a switch and they're all explodey. Like, it just completely undermines any cool stuff about the Kingsmen, how secrety they are, if you could just kill them all in a moment,
Pretty dumb.
Well, she did use that arm to hack their system, but
don't forget about the robot arm, Jeff.
But what bothers
I was too pissed about Prince at that time.
What bothers me more than like the vagina camera scene, which I consider to be like a massive James Bond spoof, but I feel like they could cut away much earlier and I would have been much more comfortable with it, is fridging Roxy. That really bothers me, because like when people came at me about liking the first Kingsman and they're like, it's so sexist, I was like, Roxy's a better agent than he is. Like I think that character's cool and I really like her, and someone, I forget who, was like, they're probably gonna fridge her in the second movie. I was like, no way are they gonna fridge Roxy in the second movie. And then boom.
So the movie made you look like a fool, Joanna.
I was the fool. And the way that scene plays out, because like the missile comes for her, And she goes, "Oh shit!" And she kind of like jumps away. And in a movie where Colin Firth can come back from a bullet shot to the head, I was like, I kept waiting for Roxy to show back up.
Hey,
I'm
we
like,
don't know what's
yeah,
going
I'm
to
gonna
happen
say
in
this.
part 3,
I'm gonna say
right?
this. If there is a Kingsman 3, I am actually betting money that Roxy's gonna be back. That's my
Half cyborg Roxy.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Well, then I hope they literally fridged her, as in that's how Indiana Jones survived a nuke. So I hope that Roxy found a fridge.
And
She's
she's
literally
got a
in a
dog,
fridge
too.
and she survived. It's the
Yeah.
opposite of fridging, basically. I think she's going to be back. But we haven't talked about Colin Firth and how they brought him back, which was with nanotechnology injected into his skull.
Nano head gel. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and then we spend an interminable amount of time with him seeing butterflies in a room. How are we
Hey,
going to
man,
wake him back
character
up?
building,
Hey,
Jeff.
I actually
Come
loved
on.
all that
I
stuff.
dug
I
that.
thought it was great. I thought because I thought that the nano gel was a great, like, super over the top. It makes no sense at all.
Oh yeah, that's like an
Can
Austin
you explain
Powers
to me
gag.
why they even showed up and took him? Like, there's 400 people with bullets in their heads. Why did they take that dude? Like, they didn't know
said
who he
must
was.
be intelligence. They assumed he
His
was like them
glasses.
because of the glasses.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
of the
the same tech.
glasses and
How irresponsible a organization to not use that nanotechnology to the greater good of humanity.
what do you
Yeah.
mean? And revive all the
I'm-
white supremacists
all the
or whatever.
racists
Yeah.
in this church.
Just everybody who's ever had a head injury.
It's true.
Well, we can't let all the secrets get out, Jeff. We can't let all the secrets get out.
I think that is one of those things where if you think a bit too hard about what's happening in this movie, like it falls apart too. Like even in that opening chase, right, where the bad guy is just sitting there having a conversation, or standing there having a conversation with Eggsy with a gun pointing at him, and the taxi driver is doing what? He's just like, he is right there. They're right next to each other. And then Eggsy has to be like, hey, by the way, look at what's happening in the back seat.
Oh, I
and
don't
the
think he
driver's
was-
like, oh.
I don't think he's a taxi driver. I think he was like a Kingsman.
Yeah,
driver.
he's a Kingsman dude. Yeah.
Whatever, guys.
Show.
The guy was sitting right there. If he's a Kingsman driver, he should be even better at this. So that's the sort of thing where I think like the construct of these sequences, like,
Well,
we just get to the-
We
also-
also have a supervillain who forces people to have the most loyalty ever, but also has robots. Like, you got to pick one or the other. You have either the robot army or you have the super loyal, do weird shit to yourself to prove how loyal you are army.
sending her best. Yeah.
They're
I really
mutually
hated-
exclusive. It's redundant.
I something that I didn't mention in the non-spoiler section that I want to say here, which is the controversial opinion apparently. I loved every single choice that Elton John made in this movie. I think this is like the platonic ideal of a celebrity cameo.
It's
When
very good.
He was great. He was
When
great.
he popped, like, okay, that slow-mo shot where he's kicking and
Yeah.
he CG
Yeah.
turns and grins at the camera, and
Yeah.
then also when he like pops his head in front of the robot dog to like save Colin Firth, something I
Yeah.
did not see coming.
Popping the head,
Like-
that's funny. Yeah.
Oh, it was good.
So good.
It's really good.
Also,
The
the callback to the back door
yes, the anal sex joke. Yes.
it was brilliant.
So
Brilliant.
Good. The Elton John thing, though, in the middle of that kick, I felt like we are watching the next Jump the Shark moment, because that's what it felt like. I love Elton. I kind of love.
He gives
what
zero
fun they have
fucks
with
to Vindra.
I
Zero.
don't care about that. I mean, more like whatever I guess semblance of sanity this movie's trying to have. I feel like that's the one bit where it's like, come on. Just,
It wasn't
yeah.
when the henchman ate a burger of another henchman.
Oh, that's
That's
totally.
not-
totally fine.
Yeah.
I loved the Elton John stuff, and have we talked about everyone? Jeff Daniels doing whatever he wanted to do.
Jeff
sure he
Bridges,
was-
I think.
Jeff,
you mean?
Jeff Bridges, sorry,
Yes.
Jeff Bridges.
I was like, Jeff Daniels was in this. What are they?
yeah, you didn't recognize
He
him?
was just drinking all those bottles of whiskey.
He's like the
And just,
Michael Caine character of the Statesman. That's
Yeah.
another thing, by the way. Why did what's her name, Julianne Moore's character, feel the need to destroy Kingsman but not Statesman? You know, like
Yeah.
There-
know about
More
Statesman.
she
Yeah.
didn't. They were so secret that she didn't know. Yeah, okay.
even though they're much richer, apparently. Yeah.
One thing I did like about this movie that Devindra brought up is that it does kind of find a lot of stories from the previous film. Like, it introduces a lot of new characters, which it doesn't do very much with. But yeah, a lot of previous characters are used to great effect. One of the main villains is a character from the previous movie.
I forgot about that guy completely. I needed that flashback. I was like, oh yes, he was.
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was...
I liked him.
Mhm.
I liked that he came back. I thought that was really well done, actually.
So, Joanna, I got to read this email. that we got. This one comes in from John from Providence, Rhode Island, who writes into /filmcast@gmail.com with an email entitled "The Aggressive Misogyny of Kingsman 2." Kingsman 2 doubles down on practically every element of the original, including many of its disturbing undertones and especially its aggressively misogynistic conception of women. Let's run through the female characters of Kingsman 2. Roxy. Despite being set up as a superior agent in the first movie, she's ceremoniously killed off, only to be brushed off with zero fanfare and completely forgotten. We've already talked about that. Poppy, a stock character, the conniving bitch with a sweet veneer but a ruthless psychotic personality motivated by vanity and loneliness. Princess Tildy, the trophy of the first movie. Princess Tildy serves as a damsel in distress, and also the cool girlfriend who's cool with sex with another woman so long as there's a marriage proposal in the mix. Clara, used as a plot device for unwittingly spying on her villainous boyfriend. In one of the most egregiously offensive scenes I've seen in years, our heroes, quote-unquote, seduce and sexually assault Clara by secretly implanting a surveillance device in her vagina, complete with a close-up internal shot of the act. And Ginger Ale, the only statesman with a non-alcoholic nickname. Ginger Ale wants to get involved in the field and is perfectly set up to save the day at the end. However, just like Roxy in the film, Ginger is sidelined through the finale, only to be celebrated as one of the boys at the end in a completely unearned victory. So, John Robinson, what do you make of that? What are your thoughts?
Speak for your gender.
As a woman, well, I have a couple things to say. First of all, the reason that I noticed this too, and I was like, "What the fuck?" The reason that Halle Berry does not have an alcoholic is the same reason that Mark Strong's character is named Merlin. Like, he's not a Knight of the Round Table; he's their gadget guy, so he has like a slightly off-brand name, and that's why she's Ginger. She's a mixer for the alcohol.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
Very nicely done.
The Princess Tildy is a damsel in distress and too much of a cool girl. I agree with that. I disagree with Julianne Moore's character. I thought she was doing just the same amount of like zany greatness that Samuel L. Jackson did in the first movie. Like those are on par for me. I liked her character a lot. And then we get to Roxy, which we already talked about, and then the vagina cam scene, which is just like ridiculously bad news. Like, why did they do that? And like,
oh man,
like
I could almost like see Matthew Vaughn thinking to himself, it's like, how am I gonna wow the crowd this time, guys? How can I outbay Michael Bay? And we have like complained a lot about Michael Bay's like, the overt sexism of a lot of his filmmaking. Like that dude is fine with like upskirt shots all over the place. Totally cool with that. This is like, I have never seen that shot before, but not in a good way, guys. Like that was really.
I have seen that shot before, actually. It's very Gaspar Noé.
He watches those kinds of
very Gaspar Noé. If you've seen Enter the Void,
it was not as sexy in Gaspar Noé.
Or like Pedro Almodovar, right?
There you go.
Talk to her. There's like this anyway.
Yeah, but basically what I'm saying is it really does not belong in this movie. I mean, you could have done that scene in so many different ways that were less gratuitous.
Just cut away.
Just cut away.
It's a horrifying moment. There's nothing sexy about it. It's like this weird, like cringe inducing. It's like, no, please don't go in there.
Yeah,
it's like,
but
I think,
they're expecting the audience to laugh, which I think is the gross part.
Yeah.
I hope not. I don't know. Like, it is unclear to me how much Matthew Vaughn is aware of like we know he's spoofing James Bond, but like how much is he aware that he's like spoofing himself to a certain degree?
Right.
Like, I don't know, but like, if we want to consider this like a commentary on all the times that James Bond has to like bone an asset in order to like, continue the mission, and how he has no compunction about it and does not call his girlfriend from the toilet to talk to her about it and stuff like that. Like, then okay, I can kind of see it being in there, but like, I don't know. My friends and I were talking about it afterwards, and we're just like, you could easily cut away because all we need to know about what was going to happen, my dude Pedro Pascal accomplished with a finger gesture earlier in an earlier scene. Said mucous membrane, made a gesture, and we all know what's going to happen, right? So you don't show it. But also, couldn't he have like knocked her out and put it in her mouth?
I think
like
that would have been
nose?
That would have been probably a little. But yes, you could have put it anywhere else. That is a mucous membrane opening too. Like, I think that's the thing. It doesn't even have to be that. You don't even have to just cut away from that. Just like not have that at all. I don't know.
Like, I don't know if the whole thing was
Like you guys
Alright.
are offering up other orifices.
There's so many other
You're
orifices.
like, why didn't he just punch her out and put it in her bum?
I like you guys are like taking this on its own merits. It's like there were other options as a spy that he could have.
Yeah, I
Honestly,
agree. It's
if you're gonna create
gratuitous.
these ridiculous rules, you better not like give us a way to just like dick around and come up with better options within like 5 seconds. I think that's pretty much it.
I agree it's gratuitous, but yeah, my mind did not go to there's 50 other things that could have 50 other ways he could have gotten it inside.
He could have done the old there's something on your tongue thing.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
When there be okay, it's hard to accomplish with this like apparent condom on your finger.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but people do in sexy times put their fingers in each other's mouths.
This is true.
That's the thing that
Also,
happens.
We
The
have
condom
technology
part-
that can save people from bullets in their heads, and you have to wear a pinky condom to enable a tracker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all
I,
very convenient imagery. That's what it is.
it was terrible. It was awful. I don't know why they did it. It didn't ruin the movie for me. Roxy made me angrier, actually, but
I think Matthew Vaughn is laughing to himself even right now about that scene. It's like I can't believe what I got away with, guys. I did it. My lifelong dream.
well.
but
Speaking,
it's like
go ahead, Jonah.
just especially given the way that they reframe the anal sex joke in this movie.
Yep.
Like, first of all, like Tilde offers it again, and Taryn, Eggsy's like, all right, like calm down, and then like the backstage pass, like that's a great way to comment on this joke.
Oh,
The people were
that
like,
was
this
so
is
good.
so offensive, and Matthew Vaughn's like, yeah, whatever, come on, like let's all laugh about
The
it.
backstage pass thing was so good. It made me go, I hope there's a third film just so they can figure out some other way to make that joke again.
It'll be
That's
the
gotta be
Cornetto,
the thing now.
Cornetto trilogy type joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the finger condom, so bad.
Every movie has got to be, if I go save the world, can I get X? And the other person has to say, screw X, I'll give you Y. And it has to be a fun, like I want that to be this running gag throughout the series of these movies.
He will be piloting a penis-shaped ship in the next movie, and just like he has to land straight in a volcano. That's just
Screw
the only
screw
option.
X, let's go spelunking. Or,
Yeah,
like,
right,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that have gotten really tired, I feel like the John Denver thing kind of came out of nowhere in this movie. Like, did Merlin mention that in the first film? I don't think so.
No.
Right?
No.
I
It's
want
just
them to retcon the
bizarre.
first film and just have Mark Strong like singing John Denver in the first film. too.
But yeah, to
He was-
Jeff's
That
point,
pissed
it
me
is.
off so much. You're a super spy organization and you can't figure out what about just standing on the mine until we're done here?
Yeah, that's all you have to
Hang
do.
out.
Literally.
Just
That was-
just stay where you are, and we're gonna go save the world. We'll come back. By the way, everybody in the movie over and over makes a point to say, "Hey, we turned off the mines out front." So they literally could have just stormed the castle, flipped the switch on the mines to off, and then Merlin doesn't have to die. But that was such a bonehead way for him to go out. It was lame.
Yeah, I expected more, but a great showing for Mark Strong and his singing voice.
Amazing. His
Yeah.
delightful Scottish accent, all of it.
Training, baby.
It is
Triple threat.
remarkable, though, Jeff, like that not only have many films used Take Me Home, Country Roads, but it is a critical part of actually another Channing Tatum film that came out this year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
just like,
do you
saying,
Self
think-
plot point.
Do you think Channing was like, Matt, guys, it's
this
in
is
my
why I
other
can't be
movie
in this
too.
movie.
Yeah, it's like
I'm out.
this is why I can't be in this movie, right?
That's what his scheduling conflict was. I had another John Denver-esque movie to be in right now.
But I did like Country Roads, which is just a great classic song, obviously. Was stuck in my head for the rest of the weekend. I was singing it in a Scottish like accent. It was it worked for me. It's ridiculous. I hate that Merlin's dead because I really love Mark Strong in both movies. And it makes me a little less excited for the third movie, knowing Mark Strong is not going to be in it. Or
Wait
will
till
he?
we have
don't know.
nanobots.
There's gonna be nanobots that can
Together,
assemble
exploded
disparate exploding body parts. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what does it say about our culture right now? Maybe we need to be taken back home to the country road. Guys. I think we need
That's
that.
where we belong, Devendra.
Yeah. We need to go back home.
Mama.
Last question, guys. Let me ask you this as we wrap up: is like, do we feel like this movie has outdone James Bond, and like, I guess another way to ask it is, are you looking forward to a Kingsman 3 more than you're looking forward to the next James Bond? What do you guys think? Joanna Robinson,
yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I think it depends a little bit more about what I hear about the next James Bond.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because I know a lot of people did not like Spectre. I didn't dislike it as much as other people, but it felt like such a tidy ending for Daniel Craig's like version of this character.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some like trepidation about like what they're going to do with that, and if they're gonna fridge another girl in order to like like whatever. But Kingsman 3 is definitely more fun than James Bond. I think the theoretical Kingsman 3 in my mind. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Spectre was very sullen and somber at the very least.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, I think this movie, even more than the first one, leaned into being a comedy. I mean, it's more Austin Powers than it is James Bond.
Yeah. And I mean, I think overall it's much more fun. I would argue much more enjoyable than any of the most recent James Bond movies. So it is.
I like how we haven't talked about the U.S. president thing, because it's so like we're seeing that level of evil every day, right? It's not even worth mentioning in this review.
Well, that's another interesting thing that like in the last movie, the U.S. president was Barack Obama.
Yes.
And in this movie, it's not. Matthew Vaughn has said that they were going to make the president more Trumpian. That the Oval Office was going to be like Trump Towers, like all gold and blinged out. But then he was like, that was when they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. And then he was like, what if Trump wins? We can't do this. It'll be too hard and too raw for people. Let's just make it a generic. Let's make Bruce Greenwood like a generic comic asshole Southern white president as we've done.
How chicken shit is that? How chicken shit is that?
Because the vagina cam is not too hard and too raw.
No. See, he's brave enough for the vagina cam, but not brave enough to like actually criticize maybe Trump as president, even though he blew up Obama's head in this movie. Guys. There's another Mark Strong spy movie that was not afraid to take it on Trump. If you know what I'm talking about, guys. Now I'm talking about the Brothers Grimsby.
If you want to talk about like an hour of extra footage on the cutting room floor, some of that has to belong to Emily Watson, right? Like, what a weird character for Emily Watson to show up and play.
Why did we need to put all of the people who in cages exactly?
Yeah,
that seems like a huge expense for the American taxpayer.
How did that happen so quickly? Where were the cages?
Why are they willingly going into the cages?
We're always ready. They're always ready to cage the American populace.
Feels like a rough bathroom situation in that whole place.
Yeah, you don't want to be bottom cage.
You don't want to be bottom cage. That's right.
Oh man, especially like when they die, they're just like leaking blood and crap everywhere.
It's a rough day. But yeah, we should also mention that they did nothing at all to deal with the massive death of many world leaders at the end of Kingsman 1, right? That's one part of Kingsman 1. Yeah, the world geopolitically it should be a complete disaster, but that's not really acknowledged in this movie. So points off for that. But
I will say I kind of dug the conceptual motivation behind Julianne Moore's character. Like, she just wants to be taken seriously as a business person.
Yeah,
that's her entire.
Drugs. That's a good thing, right?
That's her entire motivation. Is just like, hey, I do a really good job as a business person, and I really need to be acknowledged for that. So let's, contrive a way where I will be a legit business person.
That being said, dumbest plan ever. I mean, like, the president signs a piece of paper and it is the law of the land. That's exactly how legislation works, right, guys?
Her intentions are good, and actually, just like Samuel L. Jackson's character in the first movie, right? That was a pro-environmentalist message. I do kind of like the way they're flipping around, decent motivations for villains, even though they do it terribly.
But it's weird because like it sounds like we all agree that legalize is like a good thing to do, which I do. I'm a Californian, but like the movie ended on a weird anti-drug note, like I'm never touching that stuff again, and like stick to booze, whiskey or tequila or like whatever, and I'm just like,
I wonder if it was
winking at
itself. Like, we've built our business around alcohol, and actually maybe the subplot is the Kingsman would be devalued if drugs were legalized because people would be buying Kingsman Statesman whiskey less. Yeah.
It is a very, there was a piece at Vox that someone tweeted at us today about like how the Kingsman movies are very fundamentally like conservative in some ways.
Oh yeah.
Like the first movie is literally about how liberal elites are using global warming to inflict mass casualties upon the world. And this movie, right, is about the ills of using drugs, and how people should stay away from them because you never know what's going to happen. So, and then seeing Fox News, because this is a 20th Century Fox movie. Like
that was super weird.
Yeah, very weird.
I
mean,
have a
Because they use
problem with
actual
that
journalists
anyway, in
from
general.
Fox News.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's messed up.
It didn't bother me that it was like that's what was playing in the White House, because that is what plays in the White House nowadays. But like that Fox News was the only network shown. I was like, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy because you don't actually get news from Fox News. Okay, I don't know if I'm alienating your listeners.
I think we should have this
I
movie.
think we're past that.
There should be 2 moratoriums. Moratorium on John Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 3 moratoriums. Moratorium on Prince. Moratorium on any real life news person having a cameo in a movie from now on.
Right.
I've said this before.
Yeah.
It really bothers me. It really
weird.
bothers me.
But hey, at least they're not really news people, right? So
Well, but you
Really.
see,
Double
you
sing.
see people all the time from all,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I hear you.
Well, anyway, on that note,
Anderson
I think
Cooper pops up in Superman, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I think we can wrap it up. Overall, it's a movie we enjoyed. Had not even some, I'd say a lot of problems. But if you are taken in by its charms, at least the charms of the first one, I don't think the second one's going to be any different. So find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from Kyle Hillinger. And stay tuned to hear what we'll be reviewing next week. In the meantime, John Robinson, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
You can find me on vanityfair.com, or if you are into the award season, which why wouldn't you be? You can hear me on Vanity Fair's podcast, Little Gold Men.
How about you, Jeff Canada?
I have several other shows for you to check out. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Kanata with 2 N's and 1 T. I also do 2 video game shows, a weekly video game show called DLC, which you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC, and a daily quick hit 10 minutes a day audio show. Keeps you up to date. It's called Newest, Latest, Best. It's at on iTunes and Google Play, or you can find it at anchor.fm/NLB. And I also do a comedy science show called We Have Concerns that you can find at wehaveconcerns.com.
How about you, Devindra?
Oh, I am at Devindra on Twitter. I write about techandgadget.com. Check out my Apple TV 4K review coming this week.
Can you say that one more time, Devindra? You kind of glitched out there for a second.
Sure. I am at Devindra on Twitter, and I write about techandgadget.com. Check out my Apple TV 4K review later this week.
Check out all my stuff at davechen.net. Next week, we're going to be reviewing American Made, the new film by Doug Liman, starring Tom Cruise. And the last 2 Tom Cruise movies I've seen, guys, have been pretty rough. So
Pretty rough. He's playing a
hoping-
30-year-old now, so should be all good.
hoping he brings it back with American Made.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week on the official podcast of slashfilm.com.